Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rural Placemaking Innovation Challenge for the RPIC office hours for fiscal year 2022. To get us started, I'd like to turn it over to Greg Dale, Economic Development Specialist for the Innovation Center here at USDA Rural Development.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. As stated, my name is Gregory Dale. I'm with USDA Rural Development, and my colleague and I, Sherri McCarter, are going to entertain all the questions that you have about the RPIC program. Hopefully you were able to see the webinar last week. If not, that's okay. Like I said, you probably looked at the NOFA and have a lot of questions, and we look forward to answering them today. And I'm gonna go ahead and jump us off and get started. If you have questions, please drop those questions in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. We're going to answer them at this time. So with that said, let's get started.
And if you want to go on to the next slide, I think that's another look at the housekeeping to show how to ask
there
the question.
Go. We'll set it right there for a while. Thank you, Sherri. Do we have any questions in the chat or a hand raised at this time?
Not at this time.
I see some activity in the chat. I see 6 questions in the chat, 7. Okay, lots of questions coming up. Okay, one question we have in the chat from Megan is, what concrete activities can this grant fund? The description is very vague.
Now, when she said concrete activity, this is a technical assistance grant. So the placemaking technical assistance grant. So it won't do construction, things like that. It's for facilitation of a placemaking grant. So facilitation of meetings, paid for the eligible entity or to pay for staff to do the facilitation of meetings, things like that. And it's, I think we have a list in the NOFA that outlines some of the things that we'll pay for, that program will pay for.
Yeah, and specifically she put feasibility studies or environmental studies.
No, like I said, it won't fund those. Again, this is a placemaking program where it's facilitated through the communities being served, where they're identifying the things that they're interested in. Maybe they already know, but they're having these meetings to build upon and guide the process, lay out a plan of how they're going to move forward, whatever area they're trying to involve. For example, they may have looked at their assets and they have a lot of natural assets and they want to do a bike trail, like I said, so maybe they want to do a placemaking plan to kind of guide that process, identify the resources that are available to fund a project, like that, and that plan, lay it out. So a environmental study, that's more specific, more technical, where you have to hire an engineer along also with the feasibility study. And like I said, this program won't fund that type of study. On the feasibility side, if you're an eligible entity, perhaps our Rural Business Development Grant, RBDG grant, may be able to help with that, but not RPIC.
Great. I think we can move on to, we do have a question here on when the webinar recording will be available. I don't know if we know that right now, or we can come back to that at the end.
Well, we're not sure. It's in the process of being transcribed and going through 508 compliancy. And so that takes a few days for that to happen. But I would just encourage everyone to continue to check the website, because that's where the recording will be posted. And I believe, and Marie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, will participants who were a part of that webinar, will they get a notification of some sort that the recording is available?
No, they will not get a notification. You have to just kind of check back on the website.
Okay.
We have another question. Is there a template for self-certification for standard size and NAICS codes, or would a letter signed by our board or executive director suffice?
That Self-certification is just a certification. No, to answer your question, no. This just going to be a self-certification from you, just writing a letter identifying, letting us know that information. That's anything to add to that, Sherri?
I was just gonna look and see exactly what it said in the NOFA.
Okay.
There is, yeah, the link that's in the NOFA is for the size to qualify for SBA size standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the self-certification is just going to be a letter on your letterhead. It's self-certifying.
All right, wonderful. Next question. Will it cover costs of curriculum development for a training program that focuses on restoring/renovating historical and cultural structures?
It'll go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you to repeat that question.
Sure. The question is, will it cover costs of curriculum development for a training program that focuses on restoring/renovating historical and cultural structures?
It will pay for a plan to, I guess, develop a process for that, but it won't pay for the actual curriculum.
Okay. Do the seed innovation grants need to be met?
One more thing I want to add to that. Sorry for interrupting.
Okay.
That plan, let's say if you did that plan, it would include the resources or should include the resources to fund that and, technical assistance to help with that. But that actual item, it won't do the actual item in that instance anyway. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do the innovation seed grants need to be matched by the grantee or the recipient of the seed grant?
That needs to be matched by a partner. So on the seed grant, that is, you can use 10% of the requested amount of funds. Let's say if you do the max, that's going to be 15% of that is $37,500. No, I'm talking about the match. I'm sorry. I probably just confused everybody now. The seed grant is 10%. You can set aside 10% of the obligated amount. So using that same example, 10% of 250 is 25,000. So that seed grant, the match, 50% match, has to come from not the applicant, but from a partner. So, for example, let's say if you and another thing about that seed grant is the seed grant, you can use $5,000 per seed grant. In the scenario that I'm given, like I said, so 10% of 250 is 25,000. That's 5 seed grants, and each seed grant 5,000 has to be matched by 2,500. So that's a total of $7,500. And like I said, it doesn't come from the applicant. Now, where I'm probably confused, folks, when I first started off with the 15% match, because that's going to be a separate match for the total 250. That is 2 separate matches. So I'm sure we're going to talk about that a lot today, but hopefully I didn't confuse people a whole lot on that.
Right.
I probably did. We'll address it.
Thanks, Greg. And we'll move on to the next question here. Can the funds be used to conduct community meetings around broadband access and needs?
Yes. Now, I just want to clarify. It can do a plan to support broadband, but it can't actually pay for the broadband itself. Once that plan is done, in theory, you'll know the resources available, what the community wants, from broadband. You'll have all these dots connected from the plan. But like I said, I just want to let everyone know it will not pay for the broadband itself. It may, I'm pretty sure it will identify programs from USDA rural development that can fund those broadband programs, but just it won't. Yeah, but you can develop a plan to support broadband.
Okay. You may have answered one of the following questions here, asking, could this grant be used to expand internet availability?
Say that again?
That I believe you may have just answered that question. The next question here, could this grant be used to expand internet availability?
No, it can't expand internet. No.
Great. We have a question. Is there a page limitation for the narrative portion of the application?
The page limit for the NOFA sections A through G is 25 pages.
Yeah, doesn't include attachments and things like that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that, as I said, just addresses A through G.
Yes, 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 yes.
Great, thank you. Regarding Section I program overview, does the grant expect technical assistance, planning activities for placemaking and implementation of the proposed plan, or is the implementation of the phased plan activity separately funded by future funding pursuits?
I might have to have that one repeated.
Yeah, read that one more time, please.
Absolutely.
And maybe, yeah, okay.
Okay. Regarding Section I program overview, does the grant expect technical assistance, planning activities for placemaking and implementation of the proposed plan, or is the implementation of the phased plan activity separately funded by future funding pursuits?
Okay.
It's for planning and implementation.
Are we talking about RPIC in general or the seed grant?
It doesn't specifically state, it's just
Okay.
saying Section
Right,
I program overview.
Yeah, let me look.
Okay.
I.
Okay. While you're looking, I'll move on to the next one. This is a follow-up regarding curriculum. Can I use grant funding to pay for an expert to develop the plan and the curriculum for the training program?
No, it's for facilitation to the development. The plan will identify resources to fund that service, but the RPIC would be used for the technical assistance and planning. The planning of the plan only. That's a specific technical piece that have to be funded with other funds.
Okay. Can this fund the hiring of short-term staff to serve as the technical assistant / plan developer?
One of the things that is eligible for RPIC is the hours used for facilitation. So if your organization hires a new employee to conduct this work, yes, it can pay for the hours worked. So, so let's say if you're paying an employee for full-time 40 hours a week and they spend 20 hours on RPIC, you can fund those hours for that new employee or even existing employees that you have. But we won't fund, with that said, they're working 20 hours. We won't fund the full 40 hours a week, but we will fund the hours spent on RPIC. So just keep that in mind. And once the 2-year award period is over, it'll be up to that entity to continue to fund that, fully fund that full-time employee.
Great. Our project idea does not involve broadband, so we would not get those 10 points. Can you provide any information to indicate how likely we would be to have a competitive application without those points? On a related note, the seed grants are worth 10 points, but that is optional.
Correct.
There seems to be 120 total points. So if someone didn't do a seed grant, they would only have a possible 110 points. Can you say any more about that?
I'm just thinking.
Okay, I would just address how to give you an idea of how competitive it is and where scores were with last year's round. We had over 90 applications. About half of those were eligible, and we funded 13. So there's no way for us to know where an application would fall in competitiveness based on whether or not it had a broadband component to it, because there may be several that do not have the broadband component or the optional C grant component, and still they would be funded based on their score and how well they their application and their narratives lined up with the NOFA. So it's basically, it's just hard for us. We cannot anticipate with the lack of broadband or the lack of the optional C grant where an application would fall. But just because those two items are not included in your application, that does not mean that your application is not competitive.
Right. And I can't think specifically, but I think last year we had projects that did utilize the C grant or the broadband, and they competed
They were still
well.
funded. Yeah.
And they were still funded. So, but to Sherri's point, it's hard to project, but it's happened. Like I said, we have had projects that didn't have those to get funded. So,
and the scores from last year, I'm trying just to remember off the top of my head.
you're
Yeah,
talking about the score range?
Yeah,
Upper
we're in
80s.
the high 80s to upwards of 100.
Yes. This round we have actually more money than last year, so it might spread might be even greater this year. Hopefully that answered your question.
Okay. I'm not seeing a follow-up to that one. Next question I have here is, are 501c4s considered as applicant partners as well as 501c3s?
What does the NOFA doesn't reference, correct me if I'm wrong, Sherri, but the NOFA does not reference 501c4s. But they are talking about if I heard that question correct, they're talking about an aspect of a partner. And my memory serves me correct, the NOFA identifies partners, philanthropic, nonprofits, which is typically 501c3, public bodies. So, but again, the NOFA doesn't reference a 501c4 in that. And
that generally is talking about the applicants being 501c3 nonprofits is where
correct.
That reference comes in.
But it does reference a match from various partners, and maybe that's what they're talking about. I don't know if that, in regard to that, I guess that's a good question. For 501, I don't know if this is what they were asking, but if a 501c4 provided the match, would that be okay? There's a part of the NOFA that does address the partner match, but I don't know if it's that specific.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I can't.
Sorry about that. Are you still?
Yeah,
I'm good.
like I said, I'm good on that one. But if I find that section, it's not jumping out at me right now.
Yeah, it's just saying matching commitments may be made in cash by the applying organization, or it just mentions the match and partners, applicants.
Well, I'll read one thing. Like I said, applicants may recruit one or more private, philanthropic, and/or eligible public partners to provide the 15% match. So again, applicant may recruit. This is I'm looking at the PDF, the NOFA PDF 4, top left. Applicants may recruit one or more private, philanthropic, and or eligible public partner. So from reading that, I would say it would have to be. I don't know if that 501c3 can. So for C4. Yeah, no, like I said, but it's not referenced as NOFA, so I would say not, but that's a discussion we can have offline. If you have a 501c4 that want to provide a match, that'll be a conversation for offline. We have to dig into it a little bit.
Okay. And I do have another question kind of around the match, but it's also applied with seed grants here. Simon, was that more clear on who is supposed to provide match on seed grants? Or would you like more discussion on that? If you want to put something in the chat or come off mute, that would be great.
Yep, that'd be wonderful. But if I heard the question correctly, he wanted more information on who would provide the match for the seed grant? Correct. The applicant for RPIC cannot provide the match for the seed grant. It has to be a fund. It has to be a partner to provide that match. So you'd have to have a partner that's willing to submit a letter based on the criteria outlined in the NOFA, committing to that match and submitting that letter, identifying that this is for the optional seed grant, and submit that, and, you know, and that'll be sufficient for application.
All right.
But yep.
Thanks, Greg. He says now it is clear. We have another one regarding seed grants. It's asking, can you talk more about seed grants and what they are? Sure. The optional seed grant, first of all, this is optional. You do not have to do a seed grant to be eligible for RPIC, but the optional seed grant, you can set aside 10% of the funds that are requested for the seed grant. And what these are, this is about as close as RPIC will get to funding actual projects, is that if you have communities that you are working with and they have identified what they want to do, what they have in mind, and a project is a small project is identified in that project that helps with the goal of meeting whatever outline in that plan, you can use those seed grants kind of like a little motivator for the community to fund that specific a small project. So it just serves to be a motivator where the community can see small progress happening, like I said. So and you'll have to have criteria laid out on evaluation and things like that in regard to presenting this to the community. But like I said, it's just kind of a small amount of money that can kind of, work a small project, I guess, to start off a kickoff, something that's identified in that plan. So nothing big. It won't do anything big, but just something small to kind of, in my mind, I think if there's a motivator to get the community card started, see a success, and really hopefully serve as a motivator to kick that project off, the implementation of the plan. Okay, very good. Kind of have two questions that are similar here. The first one is, are grant applications made last year available so we can see how people applied? And then to kind of piggyback off of that, Amy asks, is there somewhere I can find prior project examples? We are looking at a tactical placemaking, so small projects across a few counties.
Okay, I'll take that, both of those questions. The first question, if you look on the RPIC webpage, at the very bottom of the page, there's a link to see the awardees from 2020 and 2021, and it gives a brief outline of their project. As far as the applications, we are not allowed because there's personal information in those, personal PII identifier information. And if someone, wanted to see those, you would have to go through the Rural Development Freedom of Information Act to put in a request to see those applications. It's a lengthy and timely process. And I don't know that would be helpful as we're now less than a month from the deadline for submitting applications, but that would be the process to go through.
Right, very good. I do have a couple more around the 501c4. Is that something you want to discuss now, or do you want to discuss offline? I'm not
Can
seeing
they give an example of the organization? For example,
Yeah.
Is that a chamber of commerce? Is that a tourism entity? Or just to give us an idea of a little more
Right.
specific might help us in answering that question.
Sure, Joanne
Right.
or Jenny, would either of you want to come off mute or type in the chat and give an example?
Right. If they're willing to come off of mute, we might get.
Yeah, if they could raise their hands, we can. Okay, I see you, Joanne. Let me take you off mute. Go ahead, Joanne.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. This is Joanne Galloway. I'm in Michigan, and we operate a 501c4, and we are supporting an internet development project. And so we're interested in applying to be able to start to network together partners and work on digital literacy. And so we were wondering if, as a 501c4, we noticed it only listed 501c3s in the general information. And I'm seeing today, like, I didn't dig far enough into the website to have read everything yet. So we're wondering if a 501c4 can apply. And then we're also wondering if we could also be the ones that put up the matching funds. And then the seed grants is something I hadn't looked at yet either. So I might have questions about that.
Okay. Yeah, the 501c4, sorry that, and I misunderstood the question. I thought initially you was asking about being a funding partner, but as an applicant, like I said, it's not, 501c4 is not listed as an eligible applicant. So like I said, wouldn't be eligible for the program.
Okay. So that's where we may need to switch things around and use a different entity that we're already partnering with that might be the actual applicant. And we might still be able to put up the funds for them.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
And Jenny, did that help answer some of your question too? I don't know if you want to raise your hand or come off mute or put it in the chat. Yes, it did. Okay, wonderful. We have one more question here. Is there an estimate of how many hours it takes to complete an application?
I have no idea. I think it would depend on the capacity of the applicant as to how long. I don't know if there's
the type of project. There's many factors.
And I don't know I don't know if there's anyone on who's applied for RPIC in the past. They could put a note in the chat as to how long it took them to fill out the application and put the documents together, but I have no idea.
Yep. I'll tell you how I feel. I feel that like a little under a month, that's enough. Me personally, I think it's enough time to get an application together. Like I said, put together a narrative and things like that, especially if you have a relationship with the communities you want to serve already. But now the actual timing from this side, from sitting on this side, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, it's and as I said, I think a lot of it depends on
many
the
variables.
Capacity of the applicant, capacity
That's right.
of organization.
Right.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is, the NOFA points out it is the responsibility of the applicant to identify where RD staff can provide substantial involvement in the project. Is there a list of potential services or tasks applicants can reference when deciding what services would be best to request from RD staff?
I want to point you to the website. In the frequently asked questions section, there is a section about substantial involvement. It's not a list, but it goes through a little more detail about how RD staff can be utilized. And the reason that is so important for RPIC is because this is a cooperative agreement. So because of that, it's not like a regular grant or loan program. It is a cooperative agreement, and that cooperation with the local RD staff is what makes this relationship between the applicant and the RD staff that are local so important. And we see that as reaping other benefits past RPIC. Number one is just the relationship building, getting to know the local RD staff and getting them involved in the project, because you don't know what benefit that staff person or staff people can be to the community that's being served in the future for other projects. So why this is so important is because it is a cooperative agreement and it can reap many benefits down the road. Now, as far as the applicant identifying what that relationship looks like and how the RD staff is going to be involved, all of that is dependent on the project itself that you all are working on and are submitting in your application. So it could be anything, just as an example of if your project involves community meetings, which most projects do because that's the nature of RPIC, nature of placemaking, bringing people together, developing a plan, implementing a plan. RD staff can be involved in all of that. And I hope that answers some of your question. And if you have further questions after looking at the website and the FAQs, shoot us an email. We'll be happy to get back with you or anytime.
And Sherri, I'll just read, I'm looking at the NOFA PDF page 3 under eligible project. And, it just read examples of measurable it's essentially what you said, Sherri. Example of measurable substantial involvement include, but are not limited to, the following: joint convenings of community members, partners, and stakeholders, joint delivery of training for RD programs, and the development of training sessions and outreach materials. So essentially where RD has its strength as a funding agency, we obviously know our programs that can will be able to fund various projects that's come out of this planning, but we also have planning partners, especially, the RD staff in your state. They know the state resources. So they'll be there to be able to connect the dots, because the things that are going to come out of this plan, I mean, yeah, like I said, they're going to cost money. And so we got a good handle on where the financial resources and technical assistance providers are.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. Can you talk more to the Rural Partners Network? Is this a suggested resource, or should applicants engage networks in their applications and work plans?
The Rural Partners Network, the NOFA has the website for the Rural Partners Network that, like I said, give information on that. That is a designation that's given by the agency. And like I said, and I know that link is in the NOFA. I'm gonna see, can I put that in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
I find it. There it is. Wait a minute. Just bear with me as I get this Rural Partners Networks. Wait a minute. If whoever, there it is. Copy. Moving kind of slow, but it is coming, y'all. Again, this is a designation, is on that website. I believe it will note. If you scroll to the bottom, it'll note the rural partners network and who's already incorporated into it. Again, it's a designation that's given. So that, like I said, if you're not aware of any designation, like I said, probably don't have it. So again, I dropped that in the chat. It'll provide information on that.
And then to the second part of that question, is this more of a suggested resource, or should applicants engage networks in their applications and work plans?
Is the RPN a suggested network?
A suggested resource.
Well, and Sherri, you can follow up on me. Not necessarily suggested, but these are communities that may be reaching out to technical assistance providers. I don't know. But these are communities that I assume would benefit from technical assistance. But again, not necessarily, but they're not the only community. So I'm not going to say it's suggested, but like I said, if you are aware of these communities, already work with those communities, definitely feel free to reach out to them. What any thoughts on that, Sherri?
Well, I'm trying to understand the question, and if the question is asking, should an applicant target these communities, that is up to the applicant. The applicant has to identify communities that they're going to be working with. They have to be rural, and there's some designations there. And if they are an RPN community, then fine. But that decision of what the areas that applicants are going to serve, those decisions are up to the applicant.
Yep.
Greg put the link in the chat, which outlines what communities are involved in the network at this point. But this is an initiative. I don't know if initiative is the right word, but it is a focus of this administration to reach out to underserved areas and for USDA to focus on underserved areas. And so based on select criteria that's listed on the webpage, it lays out how these areas were chosen. And it's because they have been historically maybe underserved, or they have been disadvantaged, or have other issues that they're facing, they've been identified in a network. That's how that all came about. And that's why there is, they're mentioned in the NOFA, because it is a focus of this administration. But whether or not you choose to have your project and work a project in one of those areas, that's up to the applicant.
All right, thank you. Katie, if you have anything further, if you want to either type it in the chat or raise your hand, you can sure do that. We'll move on to the next question here in the meantime. Next question we have here says, if a partner committed 1 hour per week of staff time for the entire performance period, would that show significant engagement? And as an example, someone like a town supervisor, would that show significant engagement?
The significant engagement, I guess what we were talking about earlier was for rural development staff to be participated. And we definitely don't have a number of hour, targeted for them. Just generally speaking, we want that rural development staff to be engaged. If an organization, it'll be up to the organization to determine the needs, the hourly need to be successful in the applicant. Be it an hour a day, 2 hours a day, 20 hours a week. That the applicant will have to determine that in the budget and the process to meet that 24-month cooperative agreement time frame. So, Sherri, any thoughts on that one?
No, you got it.
Yep.
Right. We're going to skip down here real quick to go back to the RPN communities. Just as a follow-up to that, will the name of the proposed cohort 2 of the RPN communities be released? Those overlap with our work and really interested in engaging those, but not listed on the website. And then thank you for the information. It's very helpful.
No, we have not heard when that second cohort is going to be released.
Okay, very good. Does the match have to be non-federal funds?
Yes, yes. And that's typical of all our programs. When I say all our program, I'm talking about USDA rural development. The match for the for the 15% for the match that can come from the applicant and or partners. The partner's going to be an eligible entity, public body, nonprofit, small business, that's defined by SBA. So it's going to be those. So, federal is not listed as an eligible applicant. So that match cannot come from an eligible entity. That match cannot come from the federal government because the federal government is not an eligible entity for this program. Yep. I'm sorry.
All right, great. Thanks, Greg. I don't see any more questions in the chat right now. Marie, is there any in the Q&A section?
Oh, yes, there are a few in the Q&A section. It says, hello, thank you for your time today. I have a simple logistical question. Who should the matching funds letter be made out to or addressed?
It couldn't be made out to myself, Sherri, or just to the RPIC team in general.
Yeah.
As long, again, as it meets the criteria laid out in the NOFA, you won't get, it'll be good. So, yep. However you see fit, you could just say to the RPIC team, Gregory, Dale, or whomever. Like I said, as long as it meet that criteria laid out in the NOFA, you'll be good to go.
Perfect. Thank you. Our next question, our entity is looking to aid more rural areas of our county to support the future of our rural municipalities. Ideally, it would be to develop a plan to support rural municipal leaders, address needs of the agricultural industry and rural businesses at large, and review needs of dedicated staff to aid economic development in this region. Does this sound like an eligible project?
Sorry, Sherri.
Yeah, I'm trying to
I would
wrap
say
my head around all that.
right.
This is, for placemaking. And I'm trying to think something, Marie, that you read that to support, support municipal leaders?
To support rural municipal leaders.
Yeah, I would have to think about what that looked like. I don't know.
And my response would be, possibly, like I said, because like you said, that's kind of a very broad spectrum there, and it could,
And there's another piece of it. It
Okay.
does say that funds would likely be used to bring in a consultant to conduct the study and cover funds of a staff member to support the project and or study locally.
And again, like I said, it depends. To answer the question, that'd be eligible. It depends. I
don't know what the study is, and the consultant.
Yes, well, that right, because one provision in the NOFA is that the substantial amount of work has to come from the eligible entity. So if you're an entity and you outsource 100% of the work to the consultant, that's not necessarily going to work. Like I said, so we want an active applicant with partners, of course, but like I said, I don't want you to necessarily outsource every aspect of this project. But again, like I said, without seeing the proposal in writing, it's hard to give a definite answer to that.
Yeah, because consultants and subcontractors can only be used in a limited basis per the NOFA, where not more than 49% of the federal grant amount requested can be contracted out. The majority of the primary work under the cooperative agreement must be performed by the applicant.
Right.
All right. I do see we do have a couple more questions in the chat box. These go back to the federal funding and match. So with ARPA funds as an example, how far down the trail are those still considered federal funds? Once they pass through a township, then to a corporate entity, are they still federal funds?
That's a very good question. I don't know what ARPA means. I don't know what that acronym means, but I'll use an example, Sherri, Community Development Block Grant. Those are federal funds, but once they hit the community level, the state or community level, they're considered local funds. So they lose that federal identity. That's typical of all our programs with funding like community CDBG. Okay. So again, I don't know what ARPA funds are.
This is Joanne Galloway, if I could just hop in. That's American Rescue Plan Act funds from earlier 2022 that went to states and local municipalities.
Oh, okay. Okay. When I saw that, okay.
So are
Yeah,
those funds, once they're in the state, then they go local? Is that right?
Typically, that's how I work with federal funds. Once it hits the states or local entity, they lose their federal identity as far as matching requirements are concerned for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, at some point they have to be considered part of their general funds. So
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that for us.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know that.
I don't know if there's any special provision for, the ARPA funding, but typically, again, like I said, once, those type of federal funds hit the state and local level, they lose their identity. And again, I don't know if there's any type of special provision in the ARPA funds. I don't know, but I'm assuming that it's probably similar to CDBG, where it just loses federal identity and it becomes local funds at that point.
Okay. The next one is very similar. You may have answered it already here. Are there any ARPA fund match restrictions? And
I will say this, as the applicant or partner, if you are thinking or in a position where you can use those ARPA funds as a match, you just need to make sure that you are following the requirements of those funding, like I said, and staying within those regulations. And because if there's a provision that says, you can't use for match, well, you shouldn't be using it for match. But assuming that there's no provision like that and it's similar to CDBG.
I think there was actually a lot of guidance encouraging, like at the county level, for them to specifically use their ARPA funds
Awesome.
as matching funds. So yeah, thank you.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Like I said, again, that sounds good to me. Thank you for that, Joanne.
thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat right now. Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask? You can sure raise your hand and come off mute or type it in the chat box.
I just did a quick Google search and I'm only seeing part of this, but this asked the question, can a municipality use ARPA funds to match federal grants? And it says those funds are subject to pre-existing limitations in other federal statutes and regulations. So I think we need to look into that further before we
Okay.
I don't know, something about that made me think
Okay.
let's look a little more on that.
Okay.
And it looks like we only have a few minutes left, maybe about 8 minutes left. So if there are any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand, type them in the chat box so we can get them answered while we have some time left here. Marie, is there anything in the Q&A box?
There is nothing else in the, I think we have oh no, it's just Greg posting some links. Thank you, Greg. We do not. But we would like to go over a few resources for you guys. If Sherri can.
Yes, next slide, please. Yeah, we talked a lot today about where to find information, and one of those resources is the RPIC webpage. The address is there. The link has been in the chat. I think Greg's put the link in the chat a few times, and you can find all kinds of information there. The application information, sign up for events. You'll find the recorded webinar there as well. And as I pointed out earlier, some folks I've noticed with some calls that we've gotten maybe haven't made it all the way down to the end of the page, but I made reference to it earlier, a section from previous applicants, previous awardees, and the little paragraph about how much funds how much money they were awarded, and brief description of their project. So I encourage you to check all of that out. And also on the next slide, a couple of other resources, and I believe Greg has been awesome about getting these links in the chat. Grants.gov, which is where you will upload your application. And then for questions, always feel free to email us. Questions, Greg and I monitor that email box. We're happy to respond to any questions that you have. And let's see, do we have one more slide or? Yep. Additional placemaking resources. We have a rural placemaking webpage, and also the placemaking toolkit. Maybe some of you were able to join us in May when we had the Placemaking in Small and Rural Communities Conference. We rolled out this toolkit. A lot of great resources there, examples of placemaking projects in other areas that you may find beneficial as well. And that concludes today's session, and we thank you so much. We've got another session tomorrow for our tribal entities to participate in a question and answer like you did today. And then we have another one scheduled for August the 3rd. And I hope you all are able to join us if you continue to have questions as you work through your application. And we thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.